I'm standing here in the old city of Jerusalem, which is also home to the Israeli parliament, also known as the Knesset, where over the past couple of weeks, hundreds upon thousands of protesters have gathered here in Jerusalem and in cities like Tel Aviv to protest Prime Minister Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu's controversial judicial reforms. A judicial crisis in Israel. For 5 straight months, Steve Rubin has taken to the streets of Tel Aviv, joining hundreds of thousands of Israelis in protest against Netanyahu's plans to overhaul the country's judicial system.
However, what Netanyahu wants to do, and what the people around him want to do, is a kidnapping of the system, and they're basically putting absolute power within the hands of the politicians.
Among Netanyahu's proposed changes, the ability for the Knesset to pass legislation free from potential revokes from the Supreme Court. Some gatherings drawing in more than 420,000 people nationwide.
It's legitimate for members of Knesset to bring laws and suggestions. That's part of the democratic process. Okay, it is legitimate for people to be out in the street protesting it.
But it's not just Israeli Jews who could be impacted by these judicial reforms. A lot of Israeli Arab citizens, many of whom identify as being Palestinian residents of the State of Israel, express their concerns about the potential implications that these judicial reforms could have on their particular communities.
And I think it's going to influence the relationship between Jews and Arabs in many, many ways. I think not all of them we can predict. For me, I'm very worried about this reform. Of course, what the politicians do is bad for everybody.
The main concern, fewer rulings for equal justice for Palestinians. Chief among them, the protection of their rights to disputed lands, justice in the courts for crimes of land confiscation, home demolitions, and extrajudicial killings by Israeli militants, and the decimation of the two-state solution between Israel and Palestine.
About justice, we have no justice, and we don't feel like we belong to the Israeli system or the Israeli state.
Some Israeli Arab citizens have lost faith in the system entirely, like Taysir Khatib.
They feel like the damage has already been done to us, so we don't feel like it will be more worse.
But there are some Arabs joining Israeli Jews in protest.
I think there is an increasing understanding on the side of many Israelis how dangerous this government is.
Mustafa Barghouti is the general secretary of the West Bank-based political party, the Palestinian National Initiative.
They say that this government that is using this level of violence will turn also on Jewish Israelis and use the violence against them.
As resident of the diverse old city of Jerusalem, Izzeldin Bukhar has befriended Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, marching with many to protest Netanyahu.
And I feel this government, it showed the true essence of this behavior, the Zionist agenda, and to push them out and to get rid of them. In the name, there was no state of Palestine ever to exist.
Back in Tel Aviv, Rubin prepares for yet another week of protests. He says the people of the region have been and must continue to fight for the preservation of Israel's democratic norms.
The only thing that we'll have, so they say us, no, don't worry, the politicians would never infringe upon our rights and start separating men and women on buses. But the religious power in Israel keeps growing and growing and growing, then all I can do is to rely on the goodwill of the politicians, and that's the last thing that I need to do.
A promised land, promising to bring people together. In Jerusalem, Diego Ramos Bachara, Medill News Service.